Okay, I think we can start our meeting today. I hope you can hear me well and also see my slides well. So hello everyone, I'm pleased to welcome you in our first Career Café meeting in this year. So this meeting is organized by Polonium Network, which is a platform operating within Polonium Foundation. My name is Paweł Morzewołek and I represent Polonium Foundation and Polonium Network team. We are a non-profit organization associating Polish scientists in Poland and abroad. And we are organizing various conferences, workshops, and discussion panels to enable exchange of experience and establishing cooperation between scientists in Poland and abroad. So first of all, I would like to start shortly presenting our platform, Polonium Network. So I would like to encourage you to register to our platform and create a profile. Thanks to this, active users will have access to current events organized by Polonium Foundation. We also publish job offers on the platform, and the members of Polonium Network have priority to participate in events organized by Polonium Network and Polonium Foundation. So at this point, I would also like to mention that Polonium Network is a great tool for employers as it allows publishing job offers and give you access to acquisition of highly skilled employees. So this Career Café meeting is a part of a series of Career Café online events, which are free to attend for Polonium Network members. So now let me move to today's meeting. So first of all, I would like to thank everyone who contributed to organizing today's event. And today's meeting is held in cooperation with our partner, VectorBuilder, which is represented today by Christina McClure, who is Associate Sales Director in VectorBuilder, and also by Dan Rosenthal, who's Territory Manager, and Hannah Field, who is Account Manager in VectorBuilder. And during today's meeting, we will discuss the topic of moving from academia to industry and present our partner, VectorBuilder. In the first part of the meeting, invited guests will talk about their transition from academia to industry. And in the second part of the meeting, the guests will run an interactive workshop. So I would like to encourage everyone also to ask questions during our meeting. And now it is my great pleasure to pass the floor to Christina and well, wish you a fruitful meeting.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Oh, no. Let's see. Okay, can everyone see that? I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it well.
Good. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this Career Café. My name is, as Paweł said, Christina McClure, and I'm Associate Sales Director for VectorBuilder. But before that, I was in academia for about 10 years, and this is actually my first stint at industry. So I wanted to just start with a quick overview of my timeline and how I got here. I did my undergraduate at the University of Aberdeen. You might be able to hear from my accent, I'm Scottish. So a lot of my education, and I never really left Scotland. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. So once I finished my undergraduate degree, I shifted to do a PhD in neuroscience, still at the University of Aberdeen. And then I moved to the University of Edinburgh to do my postdoc and established a vector core in Edinburgh during that time. And then in 2018, I made the big decision to leave academia, which I had known all my adult life, and join VectorBuilder, initially as the UK territory manager. So diving a bit deeper into my academic experience to sort of explain how my journey got me to VectorBuilder. During my PhD, I was designing and generating custom adeno-associated viruses to target a subset of neurons in a specific brain area. And at the time, it was a very new technology in the neuroscience field that was very useful to really dissect out neuronal networks. And it became a very, very popular method of gene transfer, very, very popular method to learn exactly what goes on in the brain in specific brain areas. So we were one of the first few groups globally to actually set this up as a technique. So we published it as a video protocol. To date, it's got over 57,000 views. And then when I finished my PhD, I decided to move to a lab in Edinburgh that was using the same technique, but hadn't established it in their lab, because it was a much more multifaceted lab that had a lot more computational people, a lot more techie people, and needed that one molecular biologist to facilitate that side of their experiments. So I was responsible for training and managing all the members of the lab and teaching them how the molecular biology side of things worked in the lab to give them the perspective that they needed. I was responsible for designing and constructing all the viral vectors that the lab used. I set up the manufacture process that I had developed during my PhD. I took that technology and then set it up in Edinburgh. And as that kind of person that was responsible for the very molecular biology side of things, this meant that I needed to set up very good working relationships with different elements of the institute and with the sales reps that would be trying to get the best deal possible for different pieces of equipment that I needed to bring into the lab. Resulted in many publications, one of which was Cell Reports. But during that time, I also had in my head that the providing viral vectors in this way, this gene transfer tool, was very useful in many aspects. And I knew this mainly because all our neighboring labs were coming to me and asking for help. And I thought, well, this is probably a really good business idea. So the University of Edinburgh has a really good tech transfer department, that's in charge of helping develop spin-outs and such, to develop different businesses. So I approached them and went, I have this like little gem of an idea, but I'm not sure if it's something that I can develop, and I don't know how. So they had me apply to different fellowships to see if there was a way that I could be trained up to develop this into a business idea. I was a finalist for their competition, where I basically presented a Dragon's Den type presentation business pitch to a panel, and I was one of the finalists in that competition. I also developed this set of contacts in the biotech space in Edinburgh to try and learn more about the gene therapy space and all the other biotechs that were interested in gene transfer, and was awarded a little bit of money to help develop this into an idea. And then with the backing of several lab members, lab owners in the department, the university decided to give me some funding to set this up as a vector core. So I was running the vector core out of my previous PI's lab and selling these tools to people globally. And it was completely through word of mouth. It would be colleagues of colleagues of colleagues going, I've heard that you're selling these tools. Can you help me develop these? Can you help me with making these and helping me with my research? So what we did with that is we also managed to get some funding for market research. And then through the network that I had developed in the gene therapy space, I managed to develop this collaboration with another biotech company who's now part of one of the biggest pharma companies in the world, Bayer, and we were awarded a 500K grant to do this project to help with their R&D, which I obviously can't disclose what we did and who they are and whatnot. So I managed to show that it was something that I could build, but in an academic space with academic funding, there's a limit to what support you can achieve from the university and how much you can grow this. So the funding that I received from iBioIC lasted about 2 years, and it funded for a research assistant to help me. But when I saw the end of those 2 years approaching, I thought, I can't do this by myself, and I don't have the time to find more funding to keep this going. And then along comes VectorBuilder. I get a phone call from one of the members of VectorBuilder wanting to see if we could collaborate. And I go, actually, your company sounds exactly what I want to achieve currently, but in a much bigger scale and with a much bigger team. Can I have a job? They go, are you sure? And I say, yes. Which meant that I started as a UK territory manager. I traveled around the UK and learned about the market in the UK. I managed to visit many other institutes and learn about their science, which was completely different to the science that I had been working on myself. And I really enjoyed building those relationships with scientists I would have never met if I stayed in the field that I did. And then 2020 rolls around and I'm stuck at home, as many other people were. So I decided to use that extra time that I had not traveling to support the marketing that we were doing in our company, because our company at the time was still very, very small and a very limited marketing department. So I jumped in. I thought, I have a small interest in this. Let's explore this. And the company supported me. They were like, okay, if you think you can do this, have at it. And I started to manage our social media pages. I grew them significantly. I then, during that process, I established this branding that we achieved and rolled out onto our physical branding that appears in our conferences, in all our other marketing materials. And then I also managed to learn how to record, edit, and publish videos on YouTube for the company. So there was many other skills that I managed to develop during lockdown. And then in 2022, when everything started opening up and we started looking at the company and going, okay, we need to think about how we grow beyond now that everybody has opened up and we're able to visit people, the marketing that I managed to contribute to was recognized, and we managed to invest and grow in the marketing team. We're about to take on a couple more people. We're about to work with one of the biggest marketing companies in the life science space soon. And then also the growth that I managed to achieve in the UK market as a salesperson was recognized, and I was allowed to build a team out to grow that even further, because I basically said to them, I am at my limit on what I can do as one person. I need help, which is why I managed to bring on people like Dan and Hannah, who are now part of my team. And then towards the end of 2022, with the reshuffle in our team structure, I was given more territory to manage. So I am now associate sales director of Europe, UK, and Scandinavia. At the end, I think it was December 2022, I also signed the lease for our UK office so that the logistics of the UK staff will be managed and looked after properly. And I currently manage a team of 8, but we're about to take on about 4 more people in the next month. And we're constantly growing our team. So we're always looking for talented people who are looking to take on a new challenge. And I've got into this place that I never realized I was gonna want until it was presented to me. Here is a team to manage. Here is something completely different from what you were thinking of in 2016. And I can see my contribution to the company in my contribution to the biotech, the life science field in a completely different way now. I managed to help life sciences way more than I could as a researcher. And I'm able to support the professional growth of multiple team members and help them establish their careers and work out what they want to do next and how to get there. So it's been a wild few years, to be honest. And just a few take-home messages when I was thinking about this, and thinking about what I've learned from this process is not to be scared to explore beyond the bubble that you're in. It's very easy to be comfortable in. For me, it was very easy to be comfortable in the neuroscience bubble. I could have quite easily found another job in neuroscience and just jumped from lab to lab to lab to lab. And I would have been reasonably happy, but the challenge of doing what I'm doing now would have been completely missed. You're not fixed in one career direction. Obviously, everyone knows in the academic space, not everyone is going to be a professor. Not everybody wants to be a professor either. So you should never feel the pressure to achieve that or bend yourself in that direction if that's not what suits you. Networking is not always fun. Most people do not enjoy networking, but it does pay off. I've had it pay off many times, to my surprise, every single time. And yes, the main point is be open-minded. Everything is an opportunity for growth. Even if you don't enjoy it completely, you will still learn something from the process. So I think that's pretty much it from me. If there's any, I think that I saw a couple of questions pop up.
Thank you very much, Christina. Yes, there is a question in the chat from Susanna, so let me read it. Would you have any specific tips on developing social media accounts, growing the audience for small companies working in life sciences and engineering?
Yeah, so 2 things immediately come to mind from what I've learned during this process. Consistency. So post regular content consistently. Those are 2 of the same thing that I just said. And what the weirdest thing that we discovered was Tuesdays and Thursdays are the best time to post things. It might vary depending on the content or the audience that you're reaching out to, but try and vary it initially on when you're posting something and then see what the analytic data comes back with. Chances are it's probably also going to be Tuesday to Thursday. But yes, and try and make the content that you're putting out there engaging and accessible. It's very tempting, and this is something that I was pushing against with my other team members. It's very tempting to show how technically minded you are and to show that you know what you're talking about. But if people find it really hard to read and pay attention to, then you're just going to be ignored. So try and make your content stand out and be engaging and accessible.
Thank you very much for your answer, Christina. Are there any other questions? If yes, feel free to just write it down in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question directly. So I think we can move on with the next part of our meeting, and I'll let you know if there will be any questions in the chat.
Cool.
Hi. So this part of the talk is I'm going to go just a little bit of background on our company itself, what we offer, and then go into the main bit, which is our design studio. So just to sort of start off for anyone that doesn't know, we're global leader in basically all things gene delivery. Our major headquarters is in Chicago in the USA, with office in Germany, and then all our manufacturing is shipped out of China. But we also have a number of territory managers and account managers located across the US and Europe, which is what myself and Dan do, as well as Australia as well. So we have people kind of covering the whole globe remotely. We work with a mixture of academia and industry, maybe about sort of 4,000 different organizations. So we kind of cover all research and clinical needs. And here's just a couple of people that we work with, but we work with pharmaceuticals and universities as well. So we do have a lot of different services that we offer. I won't go into all of them now because that would take a whole another presentation. But this kind of just gives you an idea of all the variety that we offer. So with our cloning and packaging, with that we do AAV, lentivirus, baculovirus, and then some other ones like piggyback as well. And then we can help you all the way from design to packaging, cloning. We also do library constructions, including CRISPR, and these can be CRISPR knockout, or we do CRISPR A or CRISPR I, which is where there's the dead Cas9 attached to the inactive transcription repressor or activator. So we do libraries for that. Also recently we've started doing mRNA services, which have proved quite popular, especially with the advancement of mRNA therapeutics really taking off. So obviously you would outsource vectors to us, and one of the things that when speaking to people that we come across is, well, there's a cost, and yes, there is a cost, but it's important to also think about the cost to not outsourcing as well. Science is imperfect and things do not go right first time, and on the next slide we'll kind of go into that a bit more, but lots of the lab is outsourced already. You're probably outsourcing many things, but maybe not your vectors for a number of different reasons. And so hopefully I can kind of show you that it is not as complex as you think it might be. So this slide is kind of just to sort of illustrate the point that I was making, that science is imperfect and nothing will go right for you all the time. I'm sure all of you have had many times in the lab where what was supposed to be a very simple experiment ends up taking you months. And it's frustrating because it just isn't working. And kind of what this is trying to illustrate is that although maybe the cost might not be that different for maybe just one attempt, but if it's taking more attempts, then it's going to take more of your time. Then there's, you know, ordering more reagents. And so it's just a thing to kind of think about how much it is costing you to do it in-house, and what you could be doing with that spare time. So that's kind of where we come in. So we can provide vectors for you and hopefully save you on that time and that stress, so you can get that paper finished that you've been trying to, or get that grant submitted. There's loads of other things you can be doing with your time. So to kind of go into the main bit, so our design studio is one of our major attractions. So on our website here, there is loads more information about some of the services that I mentioned previously, which you can have a look at. It's, I think, very easy to kind of navigate around.
Hannah?
There's sort of technical guides on there. There's a lot of information, but
Hannah, sorry, if you're showing your website, the website, it's not coming up on the screen.
You may have to minimize the presentation from full screen.
hang on one sec. Can you see it now? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is our website. And so our products and services are all listed here, and there's loads of information about all of them on there as well. So on the front page is the link to the, and I'm just going to take you through a very simple vector. It's one that I did during my master's. But on here, you can see all of our different types, organisms as well, kind of have a look at. So I'm going to do a AAV vector. So again, on all of these, you can see the guides, and that takes you to the page with all the more information on it if you need it. So on the studio, it's really straightforward. It tells you all the things that you need to add in order to move on to the next step. So if you're ever having any problems, it's probably just because one bit hasn't been added. So on this one, I just have to add 3 things: a promoter, the open reading frame, and a regulatory element. So with the promoter, we can select from our database, and we have a vast array of different promoters. We can always, if you don't see one that you want to use, you can send us the sequence, and we can see if we can use that one instead. But one I used was just very standard EF1 alpha 1. So once you've added it to the vector, it will go green, and so you know that it's been added. The next thing is adding the open reading frame. There's 2 options here. You can either select from the database or paste one in. If you click on paste, if you've got the sequence available, the DNA sequence, then you can add it in there. Alternatively, you can search for the specific gene that you're interested in. So I looked at relaxin gene, so which is the RLN1 gene in mice. So you can search for it, and it's connected with the NCBI database. And once you see it come up, you can view the sequence. And you can either add it straight into your vector. Alternatively, you can, if you wanted to edit it further, then you can do that. So there's a number of different options for editing. So you on here can sort of physically edit the different steps here. So we'll just add that back in. Alternatively, we have tags available. So you can add tags here. So we can just add a GFP to the N terminus. We also offer a codon optimization as well. So we can add that. And so we can select PESM. And if there's any restriction enzyme or restriction sites that you're trying to avoid, you can do that as well. So when we click submit, it will then give you the codon optimized sequence. It should do. It should do that. But then what you can do is just either save it to your sequence collection. So if you're designing a lot of vectors that is going to have the same sort of mutation that you've added in, then you can save it. So then you can just add it in later on. So once you've done that, you can add it to the vector. Yes, that's right. And so again, that's showing that it's been added. And then finally, the regulatory element. And then once you've done this, you can then go to finish design. And then this will come up with our summary page. So it will have your vector ID, and then if we have it available, otherwise price inquiry, and we'll be able to get back to you within 24 hours. And then it has sort of all the information that you'll need for that vector. So it's got snap gene file. All of this information you can have a look at in a PDF. And then it also has linked here the in red is all the bits that you have added yourself, and then the other bits that are also included in the vector. So it's quite a I think easy to use sort of platform. There's obviously like a lot more like different types of vectors that you can do and have a play around with that, but that's just sort of a simple one. So if I go back to the slide. So that's kind of the design studio in a summary. And then the last part is just obviously is something we like to highlight. We do have promotions sort of throughout the year, but one thing to think about is also we can offer store credit. So you can kind of see here, you can buy a certain amount and then you'll then essentially get a certain discount with the store credit that you receive. It's a good thing to think about if you have not only for discounts, but if you've got grant money that you need to use, but you're not ready to actually sort of use it, you can purchase store credit. So that's quite a good way to, and just another thing to kind of think about as well. But thank you. And is there any questions?
Thank you very much, Hannah, for the presentation. So are there any questions? So feel free to type them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask it directly. So maybe awaiting some questions from the audience. We also received some questions prior to the meeting. Some of them will relate more to the first part and some to the second part. So maybe let me start with one still touching on the topic of moving from academia to industry.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe could you give some advice to PhDs among our audience? What level of positions should they aim for as graduate with a PhD degree? Would you have any suggestions on that?
We hire PhD students quite regularly into the territory manager position because the knowledge and experience that you gain during your PhD is so valuable. And taking that to a client and talking to them about their project, going, hey, actually, I experienced that in the lab myself. And I found doing this worked. That's a relationship that is so valuable to us. Building those kind of connections is such a valuable thing to us. We regularly take on PhD students that are looking to jump into industry.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and it means, myself and as an example, it means that you can accelerate up the ladder much faster because you build it, you're using the experience that you've gained in the lab and applying it much faster into your client database.
Yeah, thank you very much. I see there is a question in the chat from Ala. Which countries do you operate in, and where do you plan to develop more? And do you have customer base in Poland?
We have a small customer base in Poland. We would love to grow that a lot more. We operate most of the world. There's some countries where it's a bit more difficult to get to in terms of deliveries. FedEx doesn't operate everywhere as easily. But yeah, most of the world is covered by us. If we can deliver it to you, chances are we can sell it to you. And what was the other part? Did I miss?
So where do you plan to develop more? Do you have customer base in Poland?
Yes, I answered that in the wrong order, didn't I? Where do we plan to develop more? So we want to, all of our production is in China currently. And as we grow our facilities and grow what we can offer our customers, we want to grow where we can produce that. So we're looking to develop facilities potentially in the EU, potentially in the UK. It really does depend on how fast the market grows in which location. So we're just keeping an eye on everything and seeing what's the best location for that.
Okay, thank you. There is a question from Alicia. Yeah, so let me just read it. I've heard that it might be more difficult getting into industry after doing a postdoc or two, because those candidates seem a bit too far into the academic environment. Do you think there is a grain of truth in that? Not for me. I did 2-3 postdocs before I shifted to industry. It depends on your, we're about to take on a couple of people that have been doing postdocs for a while as well. So it really depends on how you plan to take on this challenge. And I've interviewed probably hundreds of people at this point, and you can tell there's the desire to learn that you have during your PhD and your postdoc
is something that we are actually looking for, because you've seen, as Hanish has showed you, that we have so many different services that we offer, and we're constantly growing the services that we offer. So the desire to learn all of that, the desire to learn the new skills of sales and learning what the customers are actually working on, that hunger is something that's actually very, very valuable. So I personally would never see it as a disadvantage. If it's something that if you really have that passion to try something different, we'll see it and it will be of value to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question from Ala: do you hire also students or only PhD graduates?
We also hire students. Hannah and Dan both finished their masters before they joined us. And hopefully that was a good decision on their part. It was definitely a good decision on my part. Yeah, we're very flexible. I think when we were growing and a lot smaller, we prioritize PhD students because that knowledge base is very valuable. But now I see an advantage in taking what I've learned in the sales environment and teaching that to more younger team members. So yeah, we take on students as well.
So there is also a question, where is your production based in? But I think you already responded to that it's in China,
Yeah.
or do you also plan expanding?
Yeah, it's currently in China. We're hopefully expanding at some point within the next couple of years, but there's nothing confirmed yet, so I can't say anything. Okay, I see. Thank you. There is also a question from Katarzyna: is significant 10 years experience as a postdoc in academia a disadvantage for the move to industry? But I think it relates to what you were saying already, that this is also this kind of people that you're looking at. Okay, are there any other questions? So also in my list of questions that I received earlier, there is one: what skills can be extrapolated to industry from academia? Something that I've mentioned before, the hunger to learn, and I guess adding on to that, the flexibility that you have, where you're adjusting and you're problem solving different things in the lab, that kind of adjustment. And the way that we approach sales is constantly an experiment. It's just not in the lab. So there's so many skills that it's almost too difficult to explain to you how transferable it is. Because I approach all my problems as a scientist, even as a salesperson, I approach them as a scientist, and I go, okay, let's look at the data and decide how to move forward from that. Yeah, it's very transferable. Thank you very much. Yeah, one more question I received prior to a meeting: where to learn the next generation sequencing methods and data analysis if one wants to do it on their own? Are online courses a valid proof that one knows the techniques, or is something more needed? Ooh. Courses are handy, but there's a lot that you can learn from just going and reading papers or talking to people in the relevant fields. And if you're trying to prove that you have that knowledge, then the conversations that you're having in an interview environment or just talking to someone at a conference, that you'll be able to prove yourself more than showing a qualification on your CV. I think I've come across enough people that say they can do something on the CV, and then you ask them a question about said knowledge base and they can't answer it. So showing that you can talk about it is probably more valuable than a certificate, in my opinion. Okay, thank you very much. And
Maybe one more question from the list. From the list, could you give any advice for, let's say, PhD students thinking about moving to industry? Like, what are the best first steps? Like, how to start this journey?
Networking. Sorry, you're not going to like it. But yes, finding like-minded people is the best way to do that. So I was attending so many different networking events and just trying to find people that thought the same as me. And that helped me work out what journey I wanted to take and what direction I wanted to go in. Yeah. Find that they're like, nowadays it's so much easier. You go on Eventbrite, you search the topic that you're interested in, and all these different events come up, many of them for free. And you never know what kind of opportunities come up when you go to these events and just talk to people that have interests that are similar to yours. So yeah, that would be my key advice.
Okay, thank you very much, Christina. Are there still any spontaneous questions from the audience? If yes, feel free to just unmute yourself and jump in.
Peter, it's Ala here again. I cannot lose the notion of like how cool it is that you hire students. I just wanted to confirm for the third time, you hire actual active students to work for you.
Active students, I've had that in mind. I haven't actually hired active students yet.
Okay, so you hire graduates then?
Graduates. I hired Dan before he graduated. I took him on.
Oh, I see.
But
because you've been saying
the active students currently studying, I wouldn't rule out. We've been toying with the idea. I know other companies do it. It's not unheard of, I promise you.
Yeah, I was just, listening to you, and you've been saying like we hire students. I'm like, oh, gosh, is this some sort of internship, or is this like actual proper job agreement or contract or whatever? But even internships, I think, like in industry, that's a very good first step into doing the transition. And especially in Europe, it is common and it's beneficial to all sites involved. So I'm glad that you're considering it.
Yes, we're definitely considering it now that we have the capacity to think about these things. It's one of the things on my list of exploring. But
yeah, I bet you Polonium will be very eager to help you reach out to that group of people with those types of opportunities. Yeah,
for sure. Once we're ready to publicize it, we'll definitely reach out to Polonium and ask them to share it for us.
All right, cool. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add there, I got connected to VectorBuilder in the tail end of my master's, and actually having sort of this opportunity lined up allowed me to fully focus on my dissertation and the research I was doing, because I had no sort of worries about what I was doing after. And so, yeah, oftentimes like knowing what you're going to do in industry thereafter can sort of enable your studies, and that was immensely helpful to me.
Thank you very much, guys, for a very interesting discussion. Are there any last moment questions? If not, then let me share my screen again. So first of all, I would like to thank you again, Christina, Dan, and Hannah, for wonderful presentations and the discussion. It was, I think, very informative for all of us. So thank you very much for having you here today. I would like to also thank all the members of our Polonium network team that helped to organize today's meeting. That is Vanessa, Anna, Alicia, Joanna, Patricia, and Zuzanna. And already at this point, I would like to advertise the upcoming next Career Café workshop that will be organized by Ole Bergman, who is freelance writer and workshop leader. And the topic of this workshop will be 7 tips for improving your mingling and networking skills. So the topic we were also discussing today, that networking is not so easy, but can benefit you a lot. And next Career Café workshop will take place on 14 February. So I would also like to encourage you to sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media. So from my side, that's all. So thank you very much again for being here with us. And I hope to see you in our next Career Café meetings in the future. So thank you very much and bye-bye.